Hello. I'm back with another review. I cleared the water bottles off my desk since the Dune review, and I'm here to review the television show Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Amazon Prime. Why? Why do I review anything? Because it's a good show. So I watched this. This is like a TV show based. It's based on the concept of, and it's very loosely based on the movie with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie from like the early 2000s, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Essentially, and that movie, I've seen that movie. The premise of that movie is that both of them are spies who married each other and like live together without realizing that the other one is also a spy. It's like Spy Family, the anime or something like that. Like that kind of has the same premise. I'd say this TV show version of Mr. and Mrs. Smith has about as much in common with the original movie as Spy Family does with the original movie. Like, it uses that very basic premise and nothing else. And even that premise is turned on its head because in the show, so this show is it's got Donald Glover is Mr. Smith and Maya Erskine is Mrs. Smith. And instead of being two rival spies who marry each other without realizing the other one's a spy, they're two people who work together as spies, and their marriage is essentially a business partnership of like spy work. So it's actually flipping that premise on its head of they're not in love, but they are spies together, instead of they are in love and they realize they're spies. It's like instead they're spies and they realize they're in love, sort of. It's a little complicated. Now, Donald Glover, you're probably familiar with him, but Maya Erskine, I was not that familiar with. I watched the movie Plus One, which is a rom-com starring her and Jack Quaid, and I didn't review that, but I thought that was a really good movie, and a big part of why that movie worked for me is Maya Erskine has an ability to. She is one of the best actors I've seen at delivering convincing, like, realistic, small talk, like, dialogue. Like, casual conversation where two characters are bantering back and forth and they kind of talk over. Like, it doesn't even feel like characters. Two people are bantering back and forth. There's chemistry there, but there's also sort of awkwardness there. They kind of talk over each other. She's just good at that. She makes banter sound like actually two people bantering and not witty writing. She's one of the best I've seen at that. And this show, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, definitely uses that strength of hers, because for being a show about spies, it is not very action heavy at all. Like, if you're thinking, oh, it's a spy couple and they do spy jobs together, like, that's great. I don't really like spy shows. Like, I don't really care about spy shows. I would actually still recommend it because it really doesn't feel like a spy show. It feels like it's first and foremost like a relationship drama about these two characters, but even it's also a comedy. It's kind of a relationship comedy drama. It doesn't lock itself into one genre at all. I've never seen an action show, a spy thriller suspense show more willing to just have weird random scenes and characters and like elements to the story of the episode that don't go anywhere, that are like purely episodic or purely for comedy. Like, the missions are not real. Like, each episode is not in the beginning of in the first season. This is one season. In the first couple episodes, it's sort of a mission an episode, but they really experiment with the format a lot. Like, there's one episode, one of the last couple episodes is that they go to couples therapy, so they're having to like talk to this therapist about their problems in their relationship without talking about what they do for work, and it chronicles a few different therapy visits they do, and in between each one, a mission happens, something kind of goes wrong in their relationship, and they talk about it in the therapy session in veiled language. So it's like cutting back and forth between therapist room and little mission scenes. And there's a lot of stuff like that. There's another episode where they meet another couple, another Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and it doesn't go the way you expect. There's a lot of plot lines where it's like, I was constantly thinking to myself, a different show would take this thing they just introduced in a very different direction. It would milk it for drama. It would milk this aspect. It would milk the fact that Mr. Smith still keeps in touch with his mom when they're supposed to be, anonymous. It would milk that for drama. Have some bad guy go after her. There's plenty of elements like that. The mysterious nature of their employer, there is a running plot. There is an overarching plot. And there is some, stuff teased for a potential season 2 if they make one. But it's also very episodic in nature, very focused on the character development rather than dramatic plot developments and evil villains and, rival spy organizations. They'll, drop that stuff in there. That stuff all exists, but it's not the focus. And a lot of times that stuff will be introduced and not, ignored or not followed up on, but just not, that doesn't become the whole plot. There are rival spy organizations. There are other Mr. and Mrs. Smiths. There is a mysterious organization running this thing, running this spy agency. The spy agency's mysterious. There are, these dangerous fact forces, but they affect the relationship between the two core main characters in the same way that their work would if they were actually, software developers like they claim to be. Just a little more high stakes. The spy stuff's like the icing on the cake. It kind of feels like Donald Glover, I don't know who, maybe Donald Glover, it does seem like he had a pretty big part in writing and directing as well, but, it seems like the creative team really just wanted to make a really interesting relationship drama and found an angle to pitch it at where it, fit within a pre-established IP and, a genre that's more exciting, and that's how they got it made. But it doesn't really feel like, it definitely doesn't feel like the Brad Pitt Angelina Jolie movie. And it doesn't really feel like any other spy thing I've ever seen either. It's really, really interesting stuff. The relationship between the two characters is so believable and natural. And I do think a lot of that goes to Maya Erskine. Donald Glover also does a good job, but she can make very sort of sarcastic. She just makes dialogue that might otherwise fall flat into other people's hands sound really natural. And that's not to say the dialogue in this show is bad. She just takes good dialogue and elevates it that much further. And Donald Glover's character, Donald Glover is, good enough to play off of her, but I don't think he's quite on the same level as her as an act, of performance, but he's still really good in it, and there's still a lot of really good stuff with him. But it does, and this isn't even a criticism, this isn't a criticism because it isn't something that bothered me, but it does feel like she's kind of the main character, just because I feel like she conveys more of her inner world. Somehow, despite being the more closed-off one of the two in the relationship, her performance, I guess it's the whole, a good actor can convey just as much, if not a lot more, with silence than with words. She's the quieter one, but her sense for timing and, her sense for, timing and the rhythm of a conversation is impeccable, and when to interject, when to not, to the point where I don't know how much was scripted. It could have all been scripted. She's just that good. There could be some improv going on. She's really good at that. And yeah, it's just like that is it also has a really satisfying ending that does the thing that normally is like annoying in a TV show or movie, but TV shows do it more, where the season ender leaves it the open-ended ending, where it's like, oh, they could have, died and this, or, and the series is over, or they could, have made it out of this perilous. The season ends in a rather perilous situation. The last episode is the most action-packed one of any of them. It's very climactic. And they do end in a very perilous situation, but it's a perilous situation where genuinely I would not mind if this was the only season they made and that's how it ended. It was a pretty beautiful, they have this beautiful emotional ending wrapped into the more action-packed final episode. And I'd like to see more, but I also wouldn't mind if the story ended on that. If they wanted to not make more and they wanted to finish strong there, yeah, finish strong. Finish strong. And, go watch Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Amazon Prime if you have an Amazon Prime. It's a good show. Not the movie. I mean, you can watch the movie. The movie's fine. The show is really good. And I will definitely be keeping an eye on Maya Erskine projects in the future. And Donald Glover, too. I feel like Donald Glover's much more of a, he writes, he directs, he acts, and I noticed he directed the last episode, which was really impressive to me when I saw that in the credits, because the last episode is very well directed. It's very action heavy, and also very, you're just creative in how it reminds me of, Barry and Bill Hader's, strength of, being shocked that Bill Hader was able to direct so many of those episodes of Barry, because so many of those episodes are so creatively directed and feel like they're being directed by a far more experienced hand. Same thing goes for Donald Glover. So I feel like his talents are more multifaceted. It's acting, it's writing, it's directing, it's music, and arguably I think Donald Glover's strongest of those 4 or 5 different talents he has is not acting, I don't think. He's a good actor, but I think his best contribution is a lot of the stuff he brought as a writer and director to the show. But yeah, that tangent is over. I was saying, watch the show. It's good. I will be going now. I will be uploading this soon. While I'm on my trip, likely. I'm going on a trip. I'm traveling. I'm recording stuff ahead of time. Arrivederci!